Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to session number 10 of our course on organization theory and design. And as you know, we are in the middle of a very important topic, and that is the topic of organizational structures. And so far we have defined what structures are, what functions can they perform, and they do perform in the companies. And apart from the practical side, we then move to the theoretical frameworks of looking at various structures, like we discussed in detail the applications, the strength, weaknesses of functional structure. Then we talked about divisional, could be based on geography, on the basis of product, or on the basis of some other basis. And then we discussed a very intriguing structure where there is a dual chain of command and dual control of hierarchy, not really hierarchies, but dual flow of information with more emphasis on horizontal than vertical. And that structure we discussed under the head of matrix. And we also discussed some of the conditions in which matrix will work, and we identified that matrix will work best in organizations which are medium sized, which are surrounded by a turbulent environment, and in organizations where the focus is both in-depth technical skills development and product or service skills. So today we will move to another type of structure, which is called horizontal structure. Now you must have noticed by now that we have been talking about two types of information flows which occur in the organization, the vertical flows and the horizontal flows. And we have been talking about two types of focuses which organizations can have. They have both, but they can give more importance or more prominence to one type of vertical or horizontal flows depending on the needs and requirements of that organization. So if the organization demands efficiency, then its focus will be control. It will be more suitable for that organization to adopt vertical channels of communication and vertical channels of information flow, as compared to an organization which demands more of an organic setup where the focus is not control but collaboration. Over there, the organization will be better off if it uses more horizontal information channels, and a sense of collaboration is then built. Now this type of structure, which we are now referring to you, a horizontal structure, is different from a typical flat hierarchy in the sense that it is not organized around functions. You must be remembering that the functional structure is basically organized around functions of marketing, production, IT, finance, and other functions of the company. Divisional structure essentially is again basically based on functions, but it has a sort of envelope in which it is surrounded, and that envelope could be a product type or a geographical type or a type which is based on some other criteria of groupings of those particular departments and companies together. But in this structure, we are not talking about functional grouping of departments. Here, the approach is to organize around core processes of a company. Now, we will describe in some detail what are core processes, but to start, this structure differs from functional and divisional and matrix in a sense that here the activities are organized around core processes of the companies and not functions of the companies, and not around product categories, not around geographical categories, but around the core processes of a company. Now, the natural question which arises at this stage and which needs to be answered is, what are core processes? Now, any organization will have a number of processes. Some will be purely administrative support processes, whereas some processes will be of that importance to that organization that if we take away those processes, the work activities will stop. Those processes without which the company cannot perform its functions are core processes. For example, consider the example of a pharmaceutical company. Now, in a pharmaceutical company, production obviously will be a core process. Within production, the experts in production will then identify which are the core processes of production. Similarly, selling is a core process in pharmaceutical companies, because they cannot advertise their products on TV or in newspapers or in media. So they use their sales force to sell those products through the practicing doctors to the retailers. Because once the doctor starts writing prescriptions, then obviously the pharmacists or the people who are selling medicines will start keeping those medicines. So the sales force will actually initiate the process of branding for that particular medicine, or they will make sure that the medicine is prescribed by the doctors. So selling will be a core process, production will be a core process, and inside the process of selling, there will be certain core processes or core issues which will be the heart of selling, like maybe the rapport building techniques between a salesman and a doctor will be a core of that process. So the companies will identify what are their core processes within production or without production, and will formulate their structure around those core processes. For example, a company has a core process A and a core process B and a core process C. This is an example. And this process is actually not looking at the company like this, but it is looking across in this direction. So all the people working on process A and B and C are actually brought together so that they can easily communicate and coordinate with each other. So everybody who's working on process A, maybe he is from production, or he is from R&D, or he is from marketing, or he is from HR, is brought together. So these are the process owners. One of them becomes the process leader. Similarly, X, Y, Z people are brought here, A, B, C, F, these people are brought here, and they are looking upon this process from the initiation to completion. This is the start and this is the completion, and that is where the core process finishes. It can be overlooked by departments, like R&D can overlook it, or also overlooked by finance and also supervised by IT or HR. So in that way, it is like the creation of matrix, but there are no departmental boundaries here. And in fact, these matrices do not appear like that, and there are no boundaries in this process segment. There is no departmental boundary. Nobody is considered as from R&D and as from production or as from marketing, but they are considered as belonging to process A without any boundaries. So this is basically the philosophy behind creating horizontal structures. Now, horizontal structures, as you have seen, they eliminate vertical hierarchy. So they not only eliminate vertical hierarchy, we have just seen that they also abolish the departmental boundaries, because vertical hierarchy, we have seen, it is not structured around functions. It is not at all hierarchy, so vertical hierarchy is abolished, and the vertical information systems are not required. But at the same time, it is not even like a flat structure with departmental boundaries. It abolishes the departmental boundaries because the focus is around processes and not departments, and process can travel from one department to the other department. The process will not see that I am now out of marketing department and now I should stop. No. The purchasing process, for example, will start from the purchasing department. It will mix with production because they have to assess the incoming raw material. So purchasing and the inspectors and testers of the production department, the quality control people in production department, the engineers in production department, and the purchasing department, they all combine and they all collude in the process of purchasing. So processes look across the department, so they abolish departmental boundaries, and so does the horizontal structure abolishes the departmental boundaries. Now, this horizontal structure has not resulted overnight, or this has not resulted just for the sake of it. This is a result of environmental changes of the last 2 decades or so. And we have been noticing and constantly saying that for the last 20-25 years, the way businesses are done have changed. It is not only the impact of globalization, it is also the consumers who have changed, maybe because of globalization, but their general level of information about products, their general level of knowledge has increased. That has put extreme pressure on the companies to respond to this newly informed and knowledgeable consumer. And by all means, it is very difficult to understand the customers and consumers unless until the company is very close to them. And the best way to be very close to the customer is to become horizontal and boundaryless, because that way you will be, your expectations which the customer has in his or her mind regarding your product, you can only fulfill those quality expectations, those timely delivery expectations, those online selling and buying expectations are obviously facilitated if the organization is horizontal, because the most important characteristic of horizontal organization is its ability to be flexible, to adapt to a turbulent and changing environment at a fair amount of pace and speed, because here decisions are not delayed. It's a total autonomy. The process owners and the process people are given total autonomy, delegation and empowerment to do their jobs. So speed is also an element which is important in horizontal organization. So because now the times have changed, people have started to expect on-time deliveries and faster deliveries, and at the quality should be what they have in their mind. The perception of quality has obviously changed. So with changing environment, macro as well as micro environments, the pressure has been on the organization to undergo a structural change. And as we will see shortly, that environment and structural changes go hand in hand. The more complex an environment becomes, the more complex the structure becomes to cope with the complexity of that environment. So in brief, horizontal structure is the result of environmental changes which have been happening around us for the last 20 to 25 years. Now, there are certain characteristics of horizontal structure. We have already discussed the basis of horizontal structure. Structure here is created around cross-functional core processes rather than tasks, that we have already discussed, that here the focus is not tasks or functions or geography, but the focus is core processes, and people are taken from various departments or cross-functional teams are prepared for those core processes. Like in the example which we gave, there were people in that core process team from R&D, from production, from marketing, from sales. Now these teams are self-directed teams. They are the basis of organizational design and performance in horizontal organizations. In vertical organizations or in other forms of structures, we saw that individuals sitting on the top, middle management or corporate management or top management or SBU management, they were the ones around which organizational design was carried out. But here, the organizational design is woven around these core processes and not around departmental heads or SBU heads. So that is also an important implication on the design, because the design here will be much more free-flowing and fluid as compared to what we saw in a typical functional or a typical divisional structure. The process owners or the process leaders have responsibility for each core process in its entirety. Now that is important, because processes run horizontally. They are not interrupted by the vertical lines of department. Therefore, a process owner is responsible for the completion of that process in its entirety, which means completion right from the first step to the final step. Now, normally what happens is that if we are talking about a functional organization, then the example which I gave you, like purchasing department's activities, if we quickly try to compare what we have just said, in a functional organization, the focus is here on function. So purchasing and production and quality control will perform their duties, but they will look vertically. Purchasing will perform their job and will then present the raw material to production and quality control, who within their departmental domains will do their work, and the product, instead of moving like this, will be looked upon like this and will then be moving on. But here, in a horizontal structure, all these people from quality control, from production, from purchasing, they are all responsible for this core process of purchasing, and they are responsible from, say, this is the starting point A and this is the ending point Z of this process. So they will be responsible for this process from this point to this point. That means in the entirety of it. So the entire process is owned by the process owners, and they are responsible for this process. And this way, the accountability and the sense of ownership of people working on that process can be much more than what we see in traditional functional organizations, where the process is not the focus, but function or geography or product or some other driving force is the focus. So process owners have the responsibility for each core process towards its entirety, and they can be accountable for that because they are owning that process right from the beginning. They are free to make decisions, they are empowered to make decisions, they are given the skills to make those decisions. People on the team, which we have just seen, the process team, are given skills, are not only given skills, are also given tools and equipment and motivation and authority to make decisions. Now, this one line has said a lot of management or managerial aspects it has opened about the horizontal process. It means the focus of the organization will be to provide not only full infrastructural support to process team, but also give them motivation and authority. And giving motivation to a team or giving motivation to a group will mean identifying the basic motives around which people will work on this process and changing their perception of work from a function to a process structure or from a function to process orientation. So we can understand that providing motivation and giving authority to these people, it's a very bold decision, and it demands boldness on the part of top management as well as special top managerial skills to inculcate this sort of culture in the company. And during this core process structure, if we look at horizontal structure, during its processes, these people working on these teams are actually cross-trained, so that one individual who is working on core process team A for 3 months, after 3 months will be working on core process team B, and after another 3 months might be working on a core process C. So you can see that he is accumulating skills from process A, from process B, and from process C, and within 9 months or 10 months he has accumulated a host of skills which was not possible if he was working in a traditional organizational with functional focus. So horizontal organizations have this ability to provide multiple skills in quick time and at quick pace to their employees. Teams have the freedom to think creatively, and not only think creatively, but respond flexibly to new challenges, because new challenges will always come. In this sort of arrangement where the company has shifted the focus from function to processes, and where people are empowered, where new culture is being generated, obviously new challenges will come. But these team members will not wait for any senior to come and solve their problems, will not wait for a departmental head to come and solve their problems, because they have skills. They already have those skills, not only technical skills, but managerial skills. so that they can respond to technical and managerial problems which arise from time to time because they are well equipped, and that preparation in terms of gaining skills is obviously enhanced when the team members are cross-trained from one process to another. Now, customers are the drivers of this horizontal corporation or horizontal structure. As I was saying earlier, the need for creating horizontal structure has actually come from the consumers because of their extreme consciousness of value for money which they spend. They demand high quality, they demand easy availability, they demand product according to their wishes. So they are the ones who are the drivers of this horizontal structure because it is created to meet or to cater to their demands of high quality and high speed and other expectations which they have in their mind. So we can safely say that customers are the one who are actually driving the horizontal corporation. Effectiveness here in a horizontal organization is measured by end of process performance, customer satisfaction. End of process performance will actually mean, first of all, what was the intended end product of that process. First of all, that. Then, were the customers satisfied with that product? These customers can be internal customers, can be external customers, but for the sake of, because we are linking structures with external environment, so we will mean end users or end customers when we use customer in this particular case. But it can easily be the concept of total quality management where employees are also treated as customers. But here, since the process team is working on that process and working on its entirety, so it is quite possible that they are actually producing an end product or at least an end product for some other department or some other process team of the company. In that case, it will be internal customer. But in any case, customer satisfaction is of prime importance. If customer is not happy, then the whole driving force behind horizontal structure is actually diluted. And then it is not only the external customers only, the structure itself is based on internal employee satisfaction as well, because if people working in the process team are not happy, are not satisfied, are not motivated, then obviously it will be very difficult for them to retain this process structure because it is already fraught with difficulties. So employee satisfaction is also an important parameter of measurement of the success of horizontal structure, and obviously along with financial contribution. Now, once the horizontal structure is put into action and process teams are generated and created and the activity starts running across the organization around processes, then the resulting culture is a culture of openness, is a culture of trust, and a culture of collaboration. Because we can see that control is not a focus here. We can see that closed door management cannot work in horizontal structure. We can see that hoarding of information or hoarding of knowledge will be destructive for horizontal structure. So naturally, the culture which can sustain a horizontal structure would be a culture of trust, mutual respect, openness, a sense of teamwork, collaboration, and focus on continuous improvement. That is crucial. No matter how small or how incremental that continuous improvement is, but if the focus is on continuously improving the processes, continuously improving the quality, continuously improving the skills, continuously improving the systems, then the company will be actually meeting its challenge put up by the consumers and put up by the customers, and will have success in applying the horizontal structure. Now, if we look at the various strengths of horizontal structure, one thing which straight away comes is that this structure promotes flexibility and rapid response to changes in customer needs or environment is generated, because we have already discussed this, and we have said that since processes will shorten many delays which normally occur in organizations and will keep people more focused, will keep people more sharp, will keep people on their toes all the time. So the element of flexibility will come in the organizations, and the main purpose of horizontal structure is obviously to respond to a fastly changing environment, and that urgency, that sense of urgency and that sense of quality combines here, and flexibility results whereby the company can respond to the needs and requirements of the environment. Second strength of horizontal structure is that it directs the attention of employees towards the production and delivery of value to the customer. Now, this is important because this is a philosophical implication. Otherwise, if the employees are working in a typical functional or divisional structure, they have the mentality to think about their department or their SBU. Imagine you are working in a company which produces a commodity and you are working in production department. You will not think about marketing, you will not think about the customer who is going to buy the commodity at the end of the chain. You're only thinking about your production targets and quotas and production systems. Or if you are sitting in HR department, you are concerned with your work in HR. Similarly, in a divisional structure, the same will apply. But in a horizontal structure, since you are owning the process right from the first step to the final step, and you own the process in its entirety, and you are responsible and accountable for the whole segment of that process, and you are also given the skills to do your work, and you know that there are further cross trainings coming up in the future. So you will be looking at the end user from the point of view of performing your duties. Your attention will be directed away from inside. Your attention will be drawn to the person who is to use your product. May that person be an internal customer, may that person be an external customer, but the focus of the employees, they start treating even their employees as their customers. So there is customer orientation given to the employees, and the culture is such that without that customer orientation, the employees will not be able to successfully work in that company. Now, another strength of horizontal structure is that because of the involvement of many cross-functional teams, and because of the involvement of many people from various functions, because one process can house 5 or 6 people who are coming from 5, 6 different departments. Because of these arrangements, and because of the cross trainings available, and because of the resulting culture, the employees working in a horizontal structure have a much broader view of the organizational goals and objectives than those employees who are working in a traditional company. And obviously, there is no need to say that, but still, I would stress that each employee working in a horizontal structure will develop a focus for teamwork and collaboration. So this is the strength of horizontal structure, that it promotes teamwork and collaboration. Now, normally 20 years ago, if somebody was teaching organizational theory and design, he will or she will probably not consider it as a strength, because during those days, teamwork, collaboration obviously were required, but the general environment was not all that demanding. There was no globalization, there was no availability of internet across the world. People were less informed, they had less information. So now that need for teamwork and that need for collaboration is much more than before. Therefore, horizontal structure, since it promotes teamwork, since it promotes collaboration, is obviously now it has become a strength of horizontal structure, that it can promote teamwork and collaboration. Horizontal structure also improves quality of life for employees by offering them the opportunity to share responsibility, make decisions, and be accountable for the outcome. You might be comparing in your mind this arrangement with the typical functional or divisional organizations and the employees working there, and you will notice that here employees are also much more knowledgeable about what is expected from them. They are much more knowledgeable about the outcomes which are in their hands, They are much more knowledgeable about the responsibilities and decision making which is expected of them, and they also know that they are fully accountable for the outcomes because they cannot hide or shield behind any department. So by abolishing the departmental boundaries, in fact, people are more accountable because now they are visible in a process team. So therefore, the focus of employees becomes more clear and life becomes easy for them because now they clearly know what is expected of them. Many organizational employees have this problem, and if you ask them, are you happy on your job, ultimately the inclination would be no. And if you probe them further, it usually surfaces that they don't know what are their major responsibilities, they don't know what is expected out of them, they are just working on daily basis, working on this assignment, that project, this project, but how they are contributing, what is their overall role, they are not very clear about it. But in horizontal structure, it is one of the strengths of horizontal structure that it gives employees their role clarity, the job clarity. So because of that, now they can be cross-trained, and they are cross-trained, but that does not mean their role and their importance as an employee diminishes, because they keep on collecting or keep on accumulating skills, and that keeps on making them further useful for the organization. So therefore, employees are more committed in horizontal structures because their contributions are more visible, and the reward systems are such that they are rewarded on the basis of those contributions. So obviously there is a sense of achievement in them, and then there is a sense of future achievement. So their motivation is much higher than those employees working in traditional companies. And there are certain weaknesses in horizontal structure. The first weakness, and that is the most important weakness, and that turns the whole concept of horizontal structures into a difficult game, because the first weakness is that determining the core processes of a company is not easy. It is very difficult to determine what are the core processes. The core processes, as I already mentioned, are not all the processes in the company, and the term has basically has been highlighted more by the consultants and workers in the field of business process re-engineering. Because when re-engineering started, people started to realize that it is no point in re-engineering all the processes of a company. If a company is a credit-giving company, then its crucial process would be how does it determine the credit worthiness of the people out in the market. Credit rating किस तरह पता चलती है इस company को? How does the company knows what person or individual or what organization is worth giving a credit? So that is their crucial core process. They do a lot of other things. For example, they have an administration department, they have a human resource department, they have marketing, they have many more other things, but the core process on which the lifeblood of their business depends is determining what are the chances of having a default. If they can master that core process, then they can eliminate many overheads, they can turn their company around, they can be successful. But finding core processes and finding core processes within those core processes is not an easy job. And usually managers are not trained to look at a company in that fashion. People are trained to look at the companies through departmental perspectives. Process perspective, and you must have noticed that any organogram or chart which you have seen will represent the company, will visually represent the company, and the focus will be around departments, around SBUs, around geographies. Even the organogram is around processes, core process A, B, C, and then their teams. And therefore, shifting our paradigm is very difficult. For human beings, it is very difficult to shift their old and tried and tested paradigms. Therefore, determination of core processes becomes difficult because we are not used to look at business like that. We look at business from functional point of view. This concept look at business from a process point of view. So that is the first difficulty. And it is not a weakness, it is the difficulty of using a horizontal structure. But since The difficulty is of such magnitude and nature that it becomes a weakness of horizontal structure. The second weakness of this structure is that it requires change in culture. It requires, obviously, once we are talking about doing things around processes, then we are talking about breaking the departmental boundaries. Then we are talking about breaking the empires which people build while they are sitting in the departments. So we are breaking their comfort zones, where we are breaking their cozy areas where they sit and feel their empire growing under them. We are putting them in process teams where they have to get involved into work and decision making and ownership of the outcomes and sharing responsibility and giving skills to other people and all the time accumulating skills themselves. So you can see that this is vastly different from what a traditional manager is used to. So we are talking about change in culture, which is not easy. We are talking about change in job design. Jobs are not designed around processes in the companies. You go to any company and you find job description of people and you take a leaf from the job description, register, read a job description. It is not around processes. It is around functions. It is around chains of authorities. It is around span of controls. So all those paradigms have to be renewed when we are using horizontal structure. Similarly, because we have to change these things, we have mentioned culture, we have mentioned job design. Similarly, the information systems. Companies might be using both vertical and horizontal information system, but in this case, the horizontal system, even the horizontal system in this case will be a bit obsolete because there are no boundaries between departments now. So now we are talking about information sharing rather than information systems, and that information and knowledge is getting shared by people. It's getting converted into skills and competencies all the time, and with it, obviously, there needs to be a change in the reward system. If we are using process teams and we are rewarding people on the basis of their departmental performance, that will make life very difficult and it will not be possible. If we are using processes, then we have to reward people around those processes and not around functions. So that means making fundamental changes in the reward systems. Now, all these changes in culture, management style, job designs, reward systems, information systems, all these are occurring because horizontal structure is driven by different management philosophy. And that management philosophy is being invented or is being in practice because of globalization, because of the fast changes in environment which have occurred over the last 2 to 2.5 decades. So because of this change in management philosophy, there will be many changes required for successfully running or operating a horizontal structure, and that is why it is considered as a weakness, because it will demand massive changes. Traditional managers may balk or may run away when they have to give up authority and power. Traditionally, managers like to build empires. I mean, there is nothing abnormal about it. Once given authority and power, then people like to take control of the situation and they like to build their empires. Over here, the traditional managers will obviously understand that the first thing which they will have to give up is the authority and their power, because once they become a team member in a process, then the authority, the power, the bossiness, it all goes. Now they are team members who are also, like other team members, getting skills and sharing information and sharing knowledge. And again, change is something which is very difficult for human beings. We know it. I mean, we know that change is the only constant. That we also know. But at the same time, we also know that change is very difficult for human beings. Your set routines, your set patterns, it is very difficult to break them. And the managers who have been trained and who have been raised in traditional companies, who have had their offices and their empires built around them, and who had their spans of control and the 50 people reporting to them all the time and enjoying their power and authority, and suddenly you ask them to go to the floor and work with process people, it is a major change in paradigm. Will become very difficult unless until the whole activity is controlled and coordinated and initiated by people who understand what they are doing. Otherwise, it will become very confusing and very difficult. Another weakness which is attributed to horizontal structure is that it requires significant training of employees to work effectively in a horizontal team environment, because not all people have team working skills. It is easy to say that we will make a team and then we will work. But again, people have a group or departmental mentality rather than a team mentality. Because in departmental mentality, what happens is that you can hide behind others. If the department fails to attain its objectives or its goals, then 12 people in that department, and out of those 3 or 4 will probably be held responsible, rest can hide behind them. But in a team, nobody can hide behind anyone, because everybody is responsible. Everybody has its own role to play. Everybody is given responsibility and everybody is accountable. So working in a team means you are exposing yourself to the risk of being exposed, to the risk of being accountable, to the risk of being held responsible. Now, these difficult expectations do not occur when people are working in functional structured or functionally focused companies. Therefore, this ability to perform in teams and this ability to collaborate with others and this ability to have cross trainings, this demands special training on its own. You have to prepare people for that. If you suddenly announce that from now on we will be working on, these are our core processes and we will be working on these core processes, and Mr. Marketing Manager, now you will be working in three core processes and you will no longer be sitting in your office, then obviously you are not helping people. But if those people are prepared, they are told the significance, they are told how they will be rewarded, a future is created for them, a vision is created for them, then they are given skills and training and motivation, then they will grasp this opportunity and will bask in the glory of collaboration rather than going here and there in confusion. Now, all these to me are not weaknesses. I think they are all difficulties, they are all challenges, because horizontal structure is so difficult to operate, so difficult to manage. But since we don't have any better word, so we can, lack of strengths here will become obviously weaknesses. So another weakness of horizontal structure is that since the focus is not on functions, therefore it can limit in-depth skills development. That is quite possible, because as we have seen in the companies where the focus is purely functional and people work in their departments, as we saw in a typical functional structure, they develop functional skills. If they are working in marketing, they will develop marketing skills, production skills, IT skills, HR skills. But what about a company which is working around processes, where one day you are working with IT, HR and production, the other day you are working with engineers, quality control and sales, and some other day you are working with some other people. Therefore, you cannot develop in-depth technical skills, but at the same time, there will be opportunity for you to develop a host of other skills. But again, it is a weakness, and it can be considered as a weakness, that people will not have the freedom and will not have the opportunity to develop their departmental skills or technical skills to perfection. So with that, we now move to another type of structure, which in itself is not really a structure. Basically, we have talked about functional, divisional, matrix and horizontal structure. So we have talked about a vertical structure, we have talked about a matrix, we have talked about large organizations, and we have also talked about flat horizontal structures. Now, many a times you will see in practice that companies will demand a combination of these 3 or 4 elements. Now, a structure which combines various elements of different approaches tailored to the strategic needs of the company will be called as a hybrid structure. Hybrid means a mixture of a little bit of this, a little bit of that, not to create a hybrid structure, but to meet the strategic needs of the company. Mostly elements of functional, divisional or horizontal structures are combined to take advantage of the strengths of various structures and to avoid some of their weaknesses. Hybrid structures are usually used in dynamic environments, because they offer the organization greater flexibility. For example, you can work traditionally in a functional way in those departments where you can tolerate a functional approach, but those departments which are close to customers or which are important in bringing you close to customer, like R&D, like purchasing, like marketing intelligence, these departments can perhaps be structured in a very organic and in a very horizontal way. So some functions of your companies, you can retain them as functional focus, and some functions can have a horizontal focus. So this way you can mix elements of functional and horizontal, or if it is a large company, divisional and horizontal, and you can take advantage. So hybrid structure is basically not a separate type of structure, but a combination of the various elements which we have so far seen. Now, we talk about application of structural design. Now, so far we have discussed a number of issues in the application of structural design. We have talked about structural contingencies. We talked about the formalization and centralization and standardization, the variables, the structure variables, the contextual variables in which we talked about environment. Structural contingencies में हमने mention किया formalization, specialization, standardization, vertical hierarchies, centralization of decision making. Contextual, we will talk about environment in detail in the coming session. So far we have discussed strategies and goals in the strategic purpose, strategic intent. Culture we have been touching off and on, but we will talk about culture in detail in coming sessions. And similarly, we will be talking at length about technology and size. We have been touching off and on. So we are familiar with the terms environment, strategy, goals, culture, technology, and size, which are the structural contingencies because they will determine the application of organizational design. And we have also come up with a conclusion that the right balance between vertical control and horizontal coordination will create structural alignment. We have seen that the structures of the companies are naturally, they favor both vertical and horizontal flow of information. And if managers can pick a right combination between vertical control and horizontal coordination, then, which obviously will depend on their organizational needs. If they need more horizontal coordination, they will design a more horizontal organization. If they need more vertical control, they will design a bit more taller organization. So, depending on their organizational needs, they will form a balance between these vertical control and horizontal coordination needs, which means they will do their structural alignment. Now, if this structural alignment is not done, or if the design and structural adjustment does not occur, there will be certain symptoms of structural deficiency. If the structure is not performing, like if our systems of our body are not performing, we suffer certain symptoms of disease like fever, like headache, like chest pain, like cough, many more. So organizations will also show certain symptoms which will point towards structural deficiency. The first symptom of structural failure or structural deficiency is that decision making will be delayed because somehow the structure is impeding decision making. Either there is a hierarchy overload, or there is too much information in the system, or there is too little information in the system, or the environment and company are too far away. There is no way of knowing what is happening in the environment, so decision making is delayed. And those decisions which are made, they lack in quality. Now, that is the first symptom of structural deficiency. The second symptom is that organization does not respond innovatively to a changing environment. I mean, they respond to changing environment reactively, but not innovatively. Because reactively, because they will respond to environment after a change has occurred, they will respond to it, but they will not anticipate that change, and they are not flexible and fast enough to come up with an innovative solution at the right time. So that is also, if organizations are failing to respond to organizational changes innovatively, that means there is something wrong in their structure. And the last symptom The third symptom of structural deficiency is that within the organization, there will be too much conflict. Again, too little information and too much information both will create conflicts. Matrix, we have seen, if it is not working properly, it will create conflict. Horizontal structure, functional, divisional, any structure which is not, because the basic function of structure is to distribute information, whether vertically or horizontally. If that information is too much or too little, or if employees are not prepared to grasp that information, or if employees don't have the skills to work in that particular structure or culture, then there will be conflict, and this conflict will be evident. So in presence of internal rifts and infightings and conflicts, on top of it there will be delayed and poor quality decision made by the top managers, and organization will be rigid and a bit outdated and out of step or out of sync with the environment. This sort of organization, we can assume, is suffering from structural deficiency, and we need to, like a doctor does with the patient, after listening to the history and looking at signs and symptoms, then they examine that patient and conduct certain tests, and they come up with a diagnosis and they suggest a line of treatment. So very similarly, organizational managers and consultants, when they look at the symptoms of structural deficiency, they start finding why this structural deficiency is occurring. They start diagnosing the problem, and once they have diagnosed the problem, they try to treat it and cure it. We will continue with our discussion on external environment in the next session. Till then, it is Khudafis.